Good afternoon, this wonderful day of 2018, March the 16th, the day after the Ides of March. Today, I'm struggling with where to put my energy relative to the development of the United Nations Resident Coordinator position. On the one hand, it may just be one of those futile tasks. On the other hand, in mid-April, I'm going to learn whether or not they're going to allow me to go to Geneva and advise them, or I'm not sure if it's going to be to advise them or to participate with them in the developing of the UN Resident Coordinator position. To do it as I see it, or at least I'll have a sounding board there. Now, this is a huge task, and if I'm accepted in that process, why spend time on anything else right now that I can't complete before the middle of April? I guess that's what I have to say. I don't know if I should put any more energy there. I guess what I'm going to do will be go up to Piste and see how our hospital restaurant is coming along, and visit some friends up in Yucatan, and visit some sacred places there, and coordinate it with the event that's taking place on the 22nd of March. So maybe attempting to deal here in Mexico is misspent energy. Very difficult to know. And we should know better by this time in our life, you know. It's a beautiful day. I'm going to go for a walk and maybe a swim and maybe at least bathe myself in the sun. And I'll save the discussion I was going to have, which was intended to talk about. Whenever I give my business card out, I always say there's at least 10 things on here you don't know that you don't know. 10 things. And it's true. People do not know but they don't know what Home Planet Virtual University is, for example. It's a virtual university that we're developing on the internet once we decide and determine which platform to use. We're leaving that up to the blockchain developer guys, and they will decide for us. The other thing here, hopefully you do know this, is teaching Poe. Poe, what is Poe? Poe is a mentality that looks at things from more than just a yes-no perspective. When you're using Poe, you're using, at minimum, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual perspectives. That's at a minimum. And that people in society sometimes call that a holistic perspective. But we're actually at Home Planet teaching it much further. We're teaching it not just the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, but we're also looking at it through the lens of economics, ethics, or social justice, energy, how energy is used physically and on all the different levels of energy, and health, the health of our organisms on a human level, on the micro and on the macro, the planetary necessity for healing. So that's where Poe is so important. Then we say that I'm the chief architect of Home Planet Virtue. That just means I'm one of the guys at the back trying to steer people into how the university is going to look. And we believe it's going to be built on the 12 sector model, and it's going to be based on this color scheme, the rainbow. That's intended to be the rainbow. The integration of the 12 sector model and the color scheme is something that you may not know you didn't know. I mean, you may have known about the co-creation wheel of Barbara Marx Hubbard, which is the 12 sectors. You may have known of that. Likely you didn't. But if you did, then you may not be aware that this color scheme is different than the one that Barbara Marx Hubbard has been recommending for the last 10 years. And why our color scheme is different is another thing that you don't know, that it represents, when you're looking at the 12 aspects of society, and you're looking at the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual self, you also look at it through the lens of the 12 sectors. Sparing me going through each of the 12 sectors at this point, it also says on my card that I am the interim United Nations Resident Coordinator. Most don't even know that such a position exists. And in Canada, the United States, it doesn't. Except I'm the interim one in Canada, because we're going to have one as soon as the governments wake up to the necessity of having a retrained UN Resident Coordinator in every country. The good news is the Secretary General has recognized that he needs to redesign the position. He's not doing it in the right way, in our opinion, but we can't say that he's doing it in a wrong way, because he hasn't done anything yet with it. He's merely talking about the doing of it. So that's the good news. Then the other things on my card that identify me, and this is the Secretary General is aware of. It's the SDGs, involving the SDGs, except we're suggesting we move it from 17 down to 12. How we break them down, it's just a matter of identifying them within the sectors on the co-creation wheel. And then adding 3 more because if you take the 17, it comes down to, there's only 9 covered in the 17 SDGs. That's only because of duplication in the area of the environment. There's at least 4 or 5 of the goals relate to the environment. And it leaves out the most important one. Our model leaves out the most important one, and that is, unless you put it into governance, and that's the notion of partnerships. How do you make partnerships? Which is the 17th SDG. So we need to look at the SDGs, but we also need to look at the information that's contained in the Millennium Project and see how it relates to everything, because that's something that has to be done within the context of the new United Nations Resident Coordinator, is looking at the Millennium Project. Some thought the Millennium Project failed, but it's still going. And it's still doing something. It needs help, but it needs help at the level of the Secretary General, and it's not getting it. The other thing that I wanted to, that's on my card, is it talks about the ISO 26000. Few know about the ISO 26000. Not few. I mean, it's already being accepted by Industry Canada, and it's used all around the world. It's referenced all around the world. The ISO group has millions of corporations involved with it at varying levels. The ISO 26000, though, has been watered down for particular reasons, but we think that it's a good, even though it's been watered down, and basically by the UN, they watered it down, and then they didn't commit to implementing it. We're suggesting that, and that's part of my role, is to get the ISO 26000 at least a minimum base for corporations around the world, and to immediately start putting it in purchase orders and RFPs, that people at least seek guidance from those standards. And beyond, we're at Home Planet Virtual University. We teach not only the ISO 26000, but we educate in what is necessary beyond the ISO 26000. It's the minimum standard, not the maximum standard. And it's well ahead of all the other ones, the GRI-4, the B Corp and B Lab assessments. The ISO 26000 on its own is still ahead of all the others, but we in the ISO 26000 still may have some relevance on its own. The group itself is looking at whether and how relevant it is. And also, not in the ISO 26000, one of the key ingredients not in there, and I do know why. It's called UNDRIP, the United Nations Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People. And why is it left out? Because UNDRIP hadn't been finalized when ISO 26000 was in its development phases. So the UNDRIP is not included in the ISO 26000s. That is something that needs to be changed, and we don't know how to change it. The question is being asked these days in Canada at the Standards Organization is, should we redesign the ISO 26000? They're addressing whether or not they should redesign it. And they don't have this information that I'm talking about right now. And I have shared it with some of the organizers of the people making the decision. But to my best of my knowledge, they have not made a decision yet. The other thing that is in here is the position of the United Nations Resident Coordinator itself. The Secretary General has recognized it. It needs to be redesigned. We should have one in every country, and they should be networked, and they should all have particular education in holistic business modeling using the co-creation wheel and the 12-sector model. And through that, they can promote the SDGs and their other cockamamie stuff. But when you back up each of the other things to keep it simple, and when we design the systems will be designed based on the 12-sector model. Also on my card is COP21, which is basically the funding that is being talked about in Paris, the Paris agreements, and the future monies to be spent to achieve these SDGs. I mean, just measuring the goals is one thing, but we have to take steps to achieve them. And the achieving of the goals is going to require quite a bit more energy than it's been given so far. And the problem with well, I don't know where we say the problem. The problem is with Jeffrey Sachs. Jeffrey Sachs was the guy behind the development of the Millennium Development Goals. He failed miserably, and he continues to fail when he developed the SDGs. And he is still running one of the areas, or two of the areas, or three of the areas that are affecting the SDGs. So he's protecting himself through various institutions so that his incompetence will not be exposed. He exposed his own incompetence in the the WikiLeaks of Hillary Clinton. If you want to Google Hillary Clinton and pump in the name Jeffrey Sachs, you'll see in 2008 he advises her not to use the infrastructure at the United Nations, but to use some parts of it. Let's be clear. Not the generally accepted distribution system of the UN, but rather the core of the UN system. And I think that's what they're doing right at the moment. I'm not sure, because they're not clear on how they're funding things, but it appears that the Secretary General and the head of the UNDP are coordinating themselves in some way to see that this fiasco doesn't happen again. But I don't know well, we'll see. This is where we come in. We'll see if they will listen to what needs to be done. They know where the problems are. They may know better than I how to make the solutions too. But they're not using holistic thinking principles. And that's where the Grow Young program comes in. The Grow Young program is just a matter of understanding the human organisms and the societal organisms, the energies around the planet, the subtle energies, the impact of on the human health condition of breathing, for example, and tapping, for example, and exercise and yoga and relaxing techniques. All these things are in the Grow Young program. So that's what's on my business card. That's on my business card. mgold@homeplanet.org is how you get me. And if you go to www.homeplanet.org/WPP, you'll see an earlier rendition of our thinking that I cover here in an overview. So enjoy the day. This took only 17 minutes of your time. And I'm wondering if this operation in Toronto called Huge, if they are going to be interested in what I'm talking about as a strategy for their future clients. Consider this a pitch for the job of VP of Strategy at Huge. I mean, that's probably why I did this. Have a great day.